Nigeria, by extension Africa, battles a growing youthful population and with little or no meaningful engagement lives a ticking time bomb on our hands. We are a blessed continent with great wealth, both in people and material. Our focus on ways remains driving conversations that affects us all. Topics in the news, social concerns, politics, leadership, governance, empowerment, resource management, conflict management, finance, SME sustainability, technological innovation, food security, health, education, brain drain, our well-being, citizenship, and much more. Our goal is to continuously drive these conversations, keep them burning at the table to effect a positive change, both for our nation and continent. Ways, what are you saying, has a secret ingredient that completes the conversation every single episode, and that ingredient is you. Our past conversations shaped our yesterday. To shape our tomorrow, we must keep talking. So, I want to hear you. Be a part of our live conversations Mondays through Fridays. And let's all have our say. In a world facing complex social, economic, and educational challenges, it's easy to feel powerless in the face of overwhelming needs. Yet, history and countless unsung stories show that transformative change often begins with just one person. The power of one person is not just a concept, it is a movement rooted in the belief that a single individual armed with purpose and, of course, driven by compassion can ignite lasting impact. Nowhere is this more evident than in the realm of education, where the actions of one teacher, one mentor, one activist, or a volunteer can empower entire communities, break cycles of poverty, and open doors to opportunities. It's a beautiful week, a new episode on your favorite primetime show, Ways. My name remains Osayo Mesali, and today we're discussing the power of one, and of course, and how we're empowering economies or communities through education. Now, remember, Ways is all about you. You are the wine way. So be a part of the conversation every single day by adding your voice to the discussion. You can also head onto our YouTube channels at Official Upgrade TV. Hit the subscribe button, like, share, invite families, friends, frenemies, everyone to join the live show, and of course, share their thoughts. When I open the phone lines, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic as always. Let me allow you to please ponder on the quote for the day. It says, one child, one teacher, one book, and one pen can change the world. And this was from Malala Yousafzai. Now, Yousafzai, yes, sorry. So we'll delve into the conversation around one person and how much one person can make an impact. But first, let me run off on a break. When I come back from that break, I'll let you in on my news interest for the day. Stay with me. All right, I'm going to start the news interest. Today, hundreds of women protested in the Nigerian capital to push for a bill that would add women-only seats in the Senate and House of Representatives. Now, several African countries, from Senegal to Rwanda, have increased the number of women legislators by using quota system. Nigeria, which has no such system, only counts about 4 female senators out of 109 and 16 women in the 360 members of the House of Representatives. Now, according to the Policy and Legal Advocacy Center, they call them PLAC, a local NGO, we want the legislature to work for women. And this was said by the convener, I believe, Dorothy Njemanze, one of the organizers, who said she had counted more than 1,000 demonstrators in attendance. Now, advocates say that the seats or the reserved seat would serve as a corrective corrective to the financial barriers, entrenched gender roles, and of course a domination of politics by male power brokers that keep women out of politics in Africa, and Africa's most populous nation, that's Nigeria. So yeah, I don't know what your thoughts are on this. Me, I'm just asking one question about these, what's it called now? These reserved seats. How does this impact on the bottom line in terms of the cost of governance? That's the only thing I keep on asking. I get it, women need to be represented, but how do we balance it? Because most of the cries that we've had in the past is the fact that a lot of government establishments, there's so much concurrent expenditures, what's the word? No much investment in cap because of the over bloated system. So I want to just know how this will pan out so that we don't just have another or create another problem. But it's a good thing. I wish we could just intentionally say that some seats should just be vacated. So we just put women there. But hey, I understand the plight, and I'm hoping that we're able to find, but I'm just saying let it not strain the already overburdened system. That's my thoughts. All right, so I'll move on to South Sudan's opposition leader and former vice president, Riek Machar. He appeared in court today after being charged with crimes against humanity and treason. A fragile power-sharing deal between President Salva Kiir and his longtime rival Riek Machar have been unraveling for months, threatening to return the young nation to a civil war that left 400,000 people dead in the 2010s, right? Machar was charged this month with murder, treason, and crimes against humanity, and stripped of his position as first vice president in the unity government, having already spent months under house arrest. He was also accused of ordering an ethnic militia, an ethnic militia's attack on a military base in March that the government said killed more than 250 soldiers. Machar's supporters say that the charges against him show that the power-sharing agreement is dead and have called for an armed mobilization to bring about regime change. Machar's faction denies he ordered the attack. Oh, God help us all. I don't know how we're going to move on in Africa. But let me move on to my final story, right? Concerned parents in Ekiti State, under the aegis of coalition of concerned parents, students and stakeholders, have appealed to the federal government to reverse the age restriction policy for tertiary institution admission seekers. They appealed to the minister to use his good office and moral authority to cause a waiver for all qualified students who passed the Joint Admission and Matriculation Board examination in 2025, regardless of age, saying direct JAM to remove the portal restriction preventing these candidates from processing admission. They decried the policy, saying it had deeply affected the future of young Nigerians. JAM had begun implementation of the policy, stipulating that only candidates who are 16 years old by August of 2025 will be admitted to tertiary institutions. The implementation is not going down well with many parents and guardians who are kicking against it and seeking a reversal. And yeah, so this story, let me just quickly stay on it because that's why I've kind of like pushed through my what's in the news. I would advise that the ideal age for a child to go into the university should be 18. It's not just about brilliance when it comes to issues around university, and this is me speaking from experience. It has a lot to do with maturity and ability to, because the university is not like your secondary school where, you still have a lot of supervision and all of that. At university level, you're more or less, becoming that person where you are on your own, mapping out your plan, doing your to-do list, doing a lot of things that just breeds or shows independence. So I would say that it is really, really important for a child to be fully aware, self-aware, to be mature enough to go into university. It would help a lot, with how they would cope with the way the university is structured. Except we want to start having students where parents are still monitoring them. I've seen parents give university students lesson teacher like they're still in secondary school. You just kind of keep spoon feeding them, and it doesn't make any sense. At university level, you should be able to take a lot of life-changing decisions by yourself. That's on one hand. If at all the concern is that, okay, I've written JAM and I've passed the exams, right? Why are the parents not asking for the validity of that result to be, you understand? So if I've written the exam in 2025 and maybe I become 17 or 18 in 2020, let's have a validity period. Or if you've written the exam once, that's it, and you're done, you've passed. You don't have to go and repeat the exam. Because I know that some of these exams, you probably need to rewrite it again for a new admission cycle. So, but when it comes to that age, I feel like 18 should be the standard when it comes to admission into university. Is very important. And if you look at the way the secondary school structure is or from primary all the way to secondary, or from nursery all the way to university, the structure is already done in such a way that if you put your child in school at the right time, the right age, like you follow through, and they don't skip any of those classes, by the time the child is getting to SS3, equivalent of year 12 for some schools, that child will already be 17 plus, or even 17, or 17 plus. The child will be, so, and if we go by, admissions, maybe at 17, that same September, they can go into university. So by the time they are going into full-blown, year one, they would have probably been 18. I'm just saying, but I think 16 is young, maybe 17, I don't know. But we can work things out. But I want parents to calm down, because parents are always in that, is a bragging right. Oh, my child graduated at 19, and then what? How did he change the price of bread in the market? So let us be intentional about safeguarding the quality of the child, as opposed just rush through academics. In terms of academics, some of my children, if I really wanted to go by how brilliant they were, from year 4 in primary school, they would have just gone straight to secondary school. But I made sure that they went through all that till year 6, they graduated. Even in JSS1 to SS3, they graduated. So it's easier that way, and it will help them. So when they're in school, they're independent. They know what they're doing in school. They're not playing around. I'm just saying, but you see, parents like all this bragging right. My child graduated at 15. My child graduated at, all those things don't really count in the scheme of things. If the child is 18, add 4 years, tops 21, the child is out of school. And the child will do very well, because that maturity is very important. A lot of my classmates that did so well, they were at least 2 years older than me. Right? They were at least 2 years older than me. So I am speaking from experience. I was very brilliant in school, getting good grades and all of that. But you see, when you start to compete with children that are more advanced, and all of that, you start to all of a sudden think that you're not smart anymore. I'm just saying. Right? So it's important that you just check it as a parent. I'll go on a break. It's even important I will bring back this conversation with our guest for today, because education is one of the biggest things that we really must be intentional about, right? So that we have quality minds by the time they're coming out of those institutions. So we're talking education. Stay with us. We'll be right back. All right, so education is the foundation of progress, or for progress. Yet in Nigeria, millions of young people continue to struggle with poor access to quality schools, limited mentorship, and rising underemployment. Now, these challenges often leave youth feeling excluded and powerless. Still, individuals continue to step forward with solutions that bridge and create opportunities. So, EIE Nigeria's Oneperson campaign highlight for this month, right? It's and changemaker would be Hamed Kayode Alabi, right? And he is celebrated as a Nigerian educator and social entrepreneur whose work demonstrates how education can transform lives and, of course, build stronger communities. So thank you so much, Kayode, for joining us tonight. So do I call you Hamed or do I call you Kayode? Which of them?
mean, Ahmed is my first name, so
Okay,
it's fine.
Hamed, thank you so much for joining me, Hamed. Yes, so
It's
you are the founder of Coyote Alabi Leadership and Career Initiative. And of course, your impact, right? It's quite interesting because you grew up in the Makoko area of Lagos, one of the, would I call it, floating slums,
yeah,
where it's synonymous to hardship and limited opportunities, and that is really somehow the daily realities of a lot of people that live in that community. But we've had very great stories as well come up from that place. So give us a little bit of background, right? Just an insight as to your growing up. Is it really as interesting as they paint it when we see some of those content or videos about Makoko?
yeah. I mean, it's always that way, but I think it's important for us to understand the positive aspect as well, because I think most of the time when you hear the story, you hear the negative parts of Makoko, but you don't get to hear the good parts as well. And I think the good part is not something that we can see because we don't get to like measure it or we don't get to see it. When you're a child, you sometimes don't think about some of those things because when I was growing up, I'll go to the dump site at the back of our house. We used to call that place Abete. And, I would pick, cans, I want to make carts with cans. I want to make, build houses, I would pick like dirt around and I would just I'm always trying to mold something. I'm always trying to create something. I was curious about my society. I was curious about my environment. But as well, I'm just a child, right? And I didn't know, what that means, but I just wanted to create. So most of the time when we go to like Makoko, we don't think about like, are there children there who are curious or children who are creative and trying to create things? And if you look around the streets, you look children walking around, in their pants and everything, because I could record them that I would wear my pants to buy foods and buy, like I'm just looking back at the memory now, and it was exciting playing football on the streets. Eating under the bridge sometimes. Like there were like several memories and several moments that I have had there, but I think those were also the places that nurtured my curiosity, my creativity, being able to like um, um, engage with what I have within my community. And I think so many children in Makoko have that curiosity. So many children in Makoko have that creativity, but most of the time, obviously, there are difficulties there. People are like struggling, parents are like, finding it difficult to like support their child in between. There's like different kind of like challenges and problem with young people there. But I think, we also need to see the other parts of the story around what's the positive story in this community. And sometimes when we community to want to change the community, we need to actually change the community through that positive story because
Absolutely.
Makoko is not a place to go to say we want to save these people, but it's how do we co-create, how do we work with the people to solve the problem that they are facing, how do we nurture or nourish the creativity and the curiosity of the young people who live there. So I think when it comes to like Marco, I know it's very easy to paint the floating slum and the water and the dirt everywhere. It's very easy to paint all of those things, but then in dirt people are making, they are
There's a
making.
lot going on. But tell me
Yeah,
something, because I believe that you were inspired by your parents, right?
yep,
They
yep.
emphasized on learning, and you began teaching in those in rural Lagos communities at just 15. How
Yep.
important is the role of a parent when it comes to shaping the mind of a child? Because a parent might be watching today and thinking, oh, what I'm doing is not really significant, right? But you were shaped by largely your parents. So tell us, how important is the role of parents?
I think even before answering that question, it's very important for us to understand the social institution within the society. And the basic one is the family. We start with the parents, and the family is like the bedrock of the society. Most of the time, we think about the society, we think about schools, we think about religious institution, we think about, other kind of like agents of society. But the parents are like, that basic, that kind of like pillar of the society. And I think even though I was born and raised in Makoko, my dad, make sure I was attending like a school. It was like a private school, like I would leave Makoko and go to Alagomeji. It wasn't that far, I would trek there to school. And it was like a private school. And I started like learning how to merge words together. I could recall back in the days how I started like, I could not spell. And before I knew, I started like merging words together. Even when I was struggling, my dad had to arrange like extra lessons for me. So I would remember that I would leave home as early as like 6:30 to meet my teacher early enough, like around 7 before school resumed at 8, just to make sure that I started learning and piecing words together and piecing things together in between. And again, when I come back home, you see like another set of like lesson teacher coming in somewhere, just figuring out a way to make sure that I was learning and I was improving. In fact, it's not that I was like the best student then. It's not that I was totally good, but all of those extra support that I got from my dad, shaped, the kind of work that I do. So I think that, I understand that parents, do not have, sometimes we do not have everything. But I also think that one of the things about parenting is also the responsibility. So, how are you responsible for the child? How are you responsible for the young person? Because children are learning, and you never can tell what they are picking from. You never can tell what they are learning from. You never can tell, how they are like, figuring out their own learning. Because honestly, the day I started spelling, like before, I could not merge words together, but the day I started spelling, it was like a magic. And it was just me engaging with education in that way. And I was like, okay, if I put A and L and these words together, this is what it does. So I started pronouncing words, and before I knew, I was like pronouncing things together. And the school I also went to was Montessori school, so we did a lot of play way method. We'll play with cones, we'll play with all of those things, and all of those things shaped my kind of like my trajectory. I could recall when I was 13 years old. Before then, we moved to like Bariga, and it was like even when we moved to Bariga, it was also a whole lot, moving there. And I could recall when we moved to Bariga, when I had my junior secondary school holiday, my dad said, "Okay, let me send you to a computer school." Like I was like the youngest, I was 13 years old, and I was in a computer school, and I started learning like basic computer skills. I started learning desktop publishing. I learned graphics design. I learned, even I did a bit of computer engineering when I was learning computer architecture. I was learning basic networking. I was learning basic electronics. And I was just like learning all of those things. And I had access to the internet for the first time, and I could see the world far away from where I'm from. And, like I said, as young people, as children, we are creative. And when we create an opportunity for our child, it changes so many things. So it's not like a mistake that I've built an AI solution today. It's not a mistake that I've created an edtech platform that provides access to resources for young people on the continent. It's not a mistake. It's the connection. And I didn't know then. My dad, I probably would think that maybe he doesn't even know that, I would end up creating all of these things. He just wanted me to like explore all of these opportunities. Even when he could not even pay for the computer school fees, he would like pay bit by bit. He would negotiate with like the maybe the proprietor or the principal of that particular computer school, be like, okay, how do we pay bit by bit so that I can go through all of these lessons and all of this work? Like, he doesn't want me to be idle. We didn't have computer in our house, but it was like, okay, maybe you could learn computer somewhere else. So I think these are like some of the things that shaped, my trajectory in a way. And I think as parents, we don't know. You don't know what our child will become at the end of the day. But what we can give them is the skills and the tools for them to succeed later in life.
Amazing story, such a beautiful story. I remember when my children were growing up, one of the things your father did was to go find, there's something they call IXL. IXL was a platform where they could just go and somehow be ahead of their class, because I mean, if you've gone through all the math, English, science, at your level, it will always promote you to the next level. So my children might have been in year one, like primary one, but they were already doing work from year three and all of that. I know how it changed the trajectory. I mean, many people that are my friends, my family, my sisters, I have introduced those platforms to them, and I see how much it has increased their capacity for, skills, for math, for English, for science, right? So it's very powerful what exposure can do. So your father is truly, the real MVP here. So I just wanted to ask about the skill to rural EdTech. I think you mentioned it in passing, because from what I gather, you've impacted over 128,000 learners across Africa. with practical 21st century skills. So what are the kind of skills that you get to learn at that skill to rural edtech platform?
Yeah, just to give a bit of background about Skill to Rural, initially, we still do it. It's like an in-person bootcamp to start with. So where, young people come together, identify problems within their communities, and co-create solutions to them using design thinking. And then we bring in like facilitators to come talk to them about like storytelling, about servant leadership, about money management, which are like critical life skills for them to be successful, or for them to be able to like, all of the ideas, great ideas they've created, for them to bring those ideas into reality. So we started running this boot camp, and there were a lot of people who were reaching out to us that, oh, we want to run similar boot camp, we want to run similar, sessions, we want to do similar things, and we're like, oh, our resources are limited, and that's where the idea of the old technology came from, and also like facilitators were struggling to come into the community, like the community were hard to reach communities, the community we're working in. So facilitators were like struggling to reach or to get to those communities. And for me, it's like whenever I see a problem, I'm always like trying to brainstorm, how do I create a solution? How do we scale this work in such a way that other people can use the resources that we have? So I could recall taking all of the facilitators to studio. They recorded all the courses, and from storytelling to servant leadership to money management to design thinking, they went to record in a way that young people and children can understand. And when they did the recording, we were like, okay, so our volunteers started like taking those recordings, going into their states, into their communities, to run the boot camp, to teach kids about some of these important critical skills that are needed for the workforce and the future of work. So I thought about that. Okay, why are we hiding these resources? Why don't we create an edtech platform where, if you're an educator, for example, in Angola, or if you're an educator, for example, in Ghana, you can just create a profile and a login, and then you use the resources to teach the kids, or you take the resources yourself, and then after learning, you go into like, your classroom, or you meet some kids on the street, or you just work with like young people in your area, and you're able to cascade, to those young people in that area. Or if you're a young person yourself, you can go on and log in and then learn some of these key topics, like from negotiation, how do you even negotiate salary? How do you use social media? How do you tell, really good stories? Like these are like important skills for the future of work, or for the workforce right now. So what we have done is that instead of like just keeping all of those things to ourselves, we've decided to like, create a platform where anybody can go there and use the resources to reach out to like young people. So in fact, when you look at the numbers, like in terms of 128, like it was shocking when, we saw the growth of that number, that educators were coming in, as educators were coming in, they were using the resources and they were cascading. So, and reaching out to people. In fact, we did a case study of like a particular young professional in Ocean State, who used our resources, learned about storytelling, got a projector, organized a program for secondary school students in Ocean State, and taught those young people how to tell powerful stories. Because even like right now in the 21st century, young people have to learn to tell powerful stories, right? Because how do they communicate their work? How would they communicate their why? How do they communicate their skills if they are not able to tell stories? Those are the kind of skills you get to learn from the Skill to Rural EdTech platform. But the emergence came from like an in-person boot camp, which we are still running, because the goal is not just to scale up, right? You can scale up in terms of numbers. The goal is also to scale deep. How do we continue to run those in-person sessions, alongside having an edtech platform that allows us to reach more young people across the continent?
Interesting. And so was that how the Rafiki AI, the career advisor thing was birthed? Because I'm just trying to follow your journey.
Yeah, we're trying to connect the dots. Yeah, also again, like I said, I'm more of a person who lean into problems, right? I am looking for problems. Immediately, I'm thinking, okay, this is a challenge here. This is a problem. This is what the data is saying. And what can we create? How do we create a solution that addresses this particular problem as well? So for Rafiki, for example, again, we used to do like career seminars for kids. Like we go to schools, we run career seminars, we run career workshops. And I could recall in 2017, we did this career talk. And after doing the career talk, students had loads of questions about their career. And my knowledge was limited. at the time, right? Imagine people asking about how do I become an actor? I don't even know so much about it, but I would provide an answer. So what I did was that, so I went to watch a lot of YouTube videos. So I watched so much YouTube videos that I started piecing things together. So immediately I started like providing advice, and I came up with this model called ISLP: interest, strengths, limitation, and purpose. So interest is like, what are you good at? What your friends tells you you're good at? Those kind of things. And recently, I looked at the data. We don't have counselors in schools. We don't have career counselors in schools. Students are struggling with identifying their career paths, and then it affects the future opportunities that they get. In fact, there's an OECD data that backs this up. So there are like all of this data out there. So I was like, okay, now there's generative AI, right? Instead of using a manual way to help children find their career paths, why not use generative AI to power the solution? So the model that we've been using back in the days, we just use that model and then we train an AI, like an AI model. We trained it, and then through training it, we're able to provide, career advice and career support and career guidance and career counseling to young people in underserved or displaced communities. And we've had people even use it in refugee camps. We've had, there were people who have called me that I'm sharing this too with my sister and my brother. And, within like 4 months of launch, we already have close to 7,000 users already. And it's currently being used in more than 54 countries. And it has answered close to 30,000 career-related queries. Like, I was like, what is this? And then it just shows like the challenge and the
That
problem.
there's actually a real need. It shows that there's a real gap. Absolutely.
It's also like created on WhatsApp too, right? So you can use it on WhatsApp. So I'm not creating an app somewhere or creating a particular web platform where people cannot log in or they cannot access the platform. So to make it accessible, it's on WhatsApp. So with just a single click, you can actually chat a career advice on WhatsApp, and it's as if you're chatting with a friend. And I think that's a good case of how we can use AI for social good. And for me, again, it's thinking about problems and creating a pathway, for people in underserved communities, for young people who look like myself.
Amazing. So let's go on a very short break, right? When we come back from the break, we'll continue this amazing conversation with Hamed. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Tell us you're a Nigerian without saying a word. Energy security is one of the most pressing issues for many developing countries like Nigeria. And if there's going to be any meaningful progress, addressing our energy issues is non-negotiable.
I need to see light for my house. Make them do something.
Band A is expensive. I literally have to turn off all my appliances just to reduce costs.
We need light.
Introducing the Energy Outlook, your go-to show for everything energy. Every week, we'll bring you the latest insights, innovation, and in-depth analysis of Nigeria energy sector. From policy discussions to regulatory insights, we will analyze the key decisions influencing growth and sustainability in the energy sector. We'll bring you the human stories behind the headlines, giving you a personal perspective on the broader energy challenges. Join me every Friday at 6 p.m. for the Energy Outlook, your guide to the future of energy, where energy means business.
All right, thanks for staying tuned now. If you are just tuned in, yes, we're discussing the power of one person, empowering communities through education. Please let's hear what you have to say. Remember, you can join the conversation. Send us an SMS or WhatsApp, or leave us a comment on our YouTube links. You can just, let's have what you have to say. All right, so I've been having an amazing conversation with Hamed on, how much impact his built, right, within the education ecosystem. But before we just, continue on your work, I want you to give your genuine opinion on what you think, what we're not getting right within our education ecosystem currently in Nigeria, like the educational sector, because I know that recently, the Minister for Education had announced, additional, what's it called, things to our curriculum, things like AI, and, I'm just wondering, okay, is that how it's working? Because you have to be, you have to be prepared for those kind of things. Even your tutors, right, your educators, all of those things. Like you rightly said, you saw a problem, but you were not equipped for it. You had to go and train yourself. Then also find the people that are competent to be able to do it. So I don't know. So in your own assessment, right, because education is a very key part of our lives as humans. That is what changed your story is education. That's what changed your life trajectory, right? Education has that power to transform lives. And I don't understand why we're still not getting it right. So if you wanted to analyze, the challenges or the gaps that you see, right? Let's not call it challenges. And if you really, look at those gaps and you say, okay, these are areas that we can quickly get quick wins within what we currently have, like making lemonade out of lemons that we've been thrown at, right? So what would that be with the educational sector currently?
I think when you look at the educational sector, this is like the problem is kind of like huge, right? So the challenges are huge, the gaps are huge, but again, when we have gaps, we have opportunities. But one of the things I used to say is that you can't solve what you don't understand. And I'm not sure yet that maybe we've understood, the challenges and the problem we are facing in the educational sector. So we have to first understand what is the problem actually. Why are people not learning in classroom, or why are students like graduating and they can find jobs? What is happening within the economy, right? So we need to understand, the whole ecosystem first. We need to understand what the problem is, and we need to now go back to create a learning experience that enhances the learning of people. It's good that AI have been introduced. It's good that programming have been introduced. It's good that we've had all of those topics. But what is the essence of having all of those things in the curriculum when the teachers cannot cascade it, or when the teachers cannot use it, basically? So what are the skills of the teachers? In fact, what are the criteria for employing teachers? Or what are the criteria of getting to the school of education, for example? Because you can't talk about education without talking about teachers. You can't talk about education without talking about the pipeline that leads to like that pathway, right? The people who go to the school of education, the people who go to like colleges of education. Why is it that the people who go to the colleges of education are the people who score the lowest and the lowest of scores in the unified tertiary matriculation examination? Those are the things that needs to change. That when people score really low, they shouldn't be the one going to the school of education. We need our best minds to be in the school of education. We need our best minds to go to the colleges of education. And the only way we can do that, or the only way we can improve education, is to incentivize, people going into teaching. So, for example, if a teacher knows that when they're going to education, they are going to be paid well, right? And then you increase the criteria. You increase like what's the criteria to entry. So once you already do that, people will go the extra mile to learn. People will go the extra mile to build the skills. People will go the extra mile because the incentives are already there. So what you're doing is that you then start attracting the best minds in the classroom. And the best minds in the classroom are the people who would have probably find a way to be like, okay, how do we improve our knowledge? How do we improve our skills? Obviously, you can't still take away the pedagogical aspects of teaching. You can't still take away the knowledge of how to teach, how to deliver information. You can't take away all of those things. But we have to see it in a way that is wholesome, right? That, the best of the best or the best minds are the one going into school, and they are the one employing some of these tools and teaching them. Because it's one thing to introduce AI to the curriculum. It's another thing to see that can teachers actually use those resources and tools, and can they use it to cascade. When we did Rafiki AI, when we created Rafiki AI, we worked with an organization called Seed Care and Support Foundation, right? And one of the things we did together was to work with like low-income school teachers. We trained them, right? And those teachers were able to use the tools first, right? No, in fact, we trained the school leaders first, like the principals, and then they went ahead to train the teachers, and then the teachers started using the resources in the classroom. So what are the pathway for training? How are we upskilling teachers? We still have teachers who are still probably technophobic today, who are still like struggling to use technology, who are still struggling to use, even a laptop or to even type an email. If we still have all of those challenges and all of those problems, and then we're introducing all of these things into the curriculum without thinking about the people who are going to implement, then there's going to be a gap, right? So at the end of the day, children would graduate and they wouldn't be able to like use any of those tools, or probably that they would be using AI in the way that it doesn't lead to anything. Because when we say people don't use AI critically, for example, or people people are just using AI to like find information rather than work with AI as a co-intelligence. The reason why it happens is because there's a problem with the foundation. And the problem with the foundation is that when students go into the classroom and they can't critique things, critical thinking, creativity, reflection, when teachers don't even allow for that also in our curriculum. Because when we look at our curriculum, what are the activities? Like I said, curriculum is a learning experience which a child is supposed to under the guidance of a school. Right? So what are the learning experience, right? How are those learning experience defined? If our learning experience is still defined around the cornerstone of, I just come in, I write notes on the board, and then I teach, without any form of criticality, without any form of explanation, without any form of like connection, because there's a need for the students to be able to connect what is happening to the environment to what they are learning. If people cannot think critically at that level as well, right? It means that at the end of the day, children would use AI not critically. So we might have all of those tools, but then the dividends, we might not benefit from the dividend. And in the case where you are not thinking of like, okay, what if the school cannot do all of these things? And this is where we're working with organizations such as ours comes from. This is where looking at model that organizations like Teach for Nigeria uses to fill in some of these gaps as well, right? So to ensure that those young teachers already who are like young professionals who are energetic, who have the idea of the 21st century, who have been grounded and who have been trained, are being empowered to actually deliver the educational promise. So I think, there's a lot of, when we look at education, there's a lot of like systemic issues we need to look at, right? There's a need for us to redefine, what that learning experience means, right? Because education is an experience. It's an experience over time and it doesn't end. The school just contributes to the basic aspects, and then the children go into the society to learn and continue to learn, to be able to like solve problems within the society, because that's the aim of education, to be a responsible citizen, to be able to solve problems within society, whether in a company, whether as an entrepreneur, whether, as a doctor, whether as like any kind of, profession you end up doing, is that how do you, get the education, right? And how do you ensure that you can use all of this education to solve the key issues and the key problems we are facing in the society?
Very, very true. Because it is in the application of what is learned that the real impact then comes in. And I liked what you touched on, the selective process. I mean, I know so many people that went on to colleges of education. They had to merge like 3 WAEC results together to be able to even, go into those schools. People that are truly struggling academically are the ones that make it to the colleges of education. Then you then wonder why we're having the challenges that we have today. But there was something very pivotal that you talked about when you touched on your dad and how there was personalized education, right? Because if you look at it, he saw there was a gap. You struggled, to be able to make out the meaning of words and understand how to read. And he was able to give you a personalized system where you woke up at 6 a.m. to get to the teacher at 7, do all that in training before the main school starts. I believe those were very key things that helped you, to pivot. And again, all the extra curricular learnings that you did. So now, with the platforms that you have built, right? How personalized are those platforms? Can it meet everybody at every level? So it's not just, okay, people that are able to comprehend. It can meet all kinds of learners at all levels. Is that possible with the platform that you have built?
I can confidently say that with Rafiki, because I think Rafiki can even speak Yoruba or the languages, so I can say that with Rafiki. And the way and the way, in fact, he could do pidgin as well. And with the way Rafiki AI has been trained, it has been trained in such a way that even a 5-year-old can understand. So depending on the way you're chatting, it's going to pick up with who is chatting as well. It's going to pick up
It follows
the
your
language
pace
as well, right? And then it's going Yeah, exactly. And then it's going to interact in that way. Obviously, you could create like career pathway planning under 2 minutes, right? And you could answer questions. You could answer questions around your interest. So one of the ways we built it is that you could answer question around your interest. You could answer question around your strength. So it should be asking some key question in a way that is interactive. So it's as if you're chatting with like so there was this feedback we got recently of a young woman. She was struggling with an assignment in school. Guess where she got the solution? Rafiki. Even mental AI could not provide a solution. And she went to Rafiki and then she was starting with it. And before she knew, she found clarity on the assignment. When she gave us the feedback, she gave us the feedback even in Yoruba,
Wow.
right? Yeah, she gave us the feedback in Yoruba. And I was like, this is shocking. And it just shows that, when we are creating or what we are building, we need people with lived experience to start building solution. Because if you've gone through a particular challenge or a particular problem, you know the system, you know the problem deeply, you're able to create a solution that actually addresses, all of these issues to make sure that learning can meet people at their own pace, learning can meet people at where they are currently at. And I think that's something about technology, that we don't just create technology because we want to create a fancy technology and to show that we are now edtech leaders or so-called people who have created a solution. We need to create a solution that addresses the problem and that meets people where they are currently at. Because I might have said I want to create something that is fancy, that is on web, that is like everybody does, but I decided to make it simple. Like let's just create something on WhatsApp. Just in fact, the AI will be the one to start with career guidance, and then you type, and before you know, you are chatting with it as if it's like a human, and you're having that conversation with it. So, and it can pick the pace, it can pick the level. Obviously, are there going to be improvements in the future? Yes, maybe, probably, because there's still so much we can learn. But you would see the excitement in the face of the kids that they could chat in this way, and they could have conversation with somebody that is not their teacher, somebody that might not be their parents, and they could chat with like a different AI solution. And the challenge you might be saying is that, would they start saying things that are not responsible? So that's why we've already have guardrails that if they say something that doesn't connect, it's going to bring them back to that career conversation. It's going to bring them back to that, like, looking at their interest strengths, conversation as well.
Yeah.
So, and you see, again, all of these things comes through lived experience. It comes through understanding the problem, understanding context, working with young people within those communities. Because when we built, it was based on 7 years of experience working with these young people. So it didn't just come from like creating an AI. It's because we've worked with these young people. We know the capabilities. In fact, the first set of prompting we released before, when I was chatting with the first solution we created, like the first prototype, I was like, no, we can't release this to the world. We need to go back. We need to make sure this is understandable. We need to make sure that this goes to the level of the young people we want to support. So whether you're like on high, whether you're like on low level, you can still understand the AI solution and you can still engage with it.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So you kind of like guided me to my final thoughts for the evening. So where's the future? First of all, is graffiti in other languages apart from Yoruba? That's one. Then, where's the future? Where do you see us? Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. So it's Yoruba, Hausa, Igbo, Pidgin, Swahili. You could chat in Swahili, French. You could chat it in French. Obviously, like that's why we've had people from like even Arabic as well. In fact, my younger brother took it to an Arabic school, and some of the younger people were chatting with it in Arabic as well. So it was fun to see.
Awesome. So it means
But yeah,
are we able to spread that to all, probably all all parts of Nigeria? Because there's Efik language, there's Tiv, there's Benin, like literally the possibilities are endless. So where do you see us going with graffiti for, I mean, to be able to then have that real inclusivity in building communities?
just we have to like train that model locally as well, because that's also another kind of like that's another like ecosystem entirely, like language, right? Because I had a friend who is working on a solution where like he's training like language, he's using AI to train languages so that those languages don't go into extinction. So I think that might be something to explore in the future, which I'm looking forward to. But yeah, what does the future look like? We keep building some of the solution. Again, I don't know what the next problem would be, but for me, it's like, how do I create solution from some of this problem, right? When I see problems, when I see challenges within the educational sector, what could we create? What could we build to ensure that we create access, so that more people can have access to like resources and tools to change their circumstances, because it shouldn't be rich kids having access to tools and resources every time. And one of the things that we're also planning to do is to build a paid version where people can get more high-level career support, and then we use that money to continue to run the free version. So kind of like creating that redistribution of wealth in a way, right, where we are able to redistribute wealth in a way that it's sustainable as well. So we are thinking about several ideas that we're going to be reiterating, and we're also like building an innovation center very soon, which is currently on the ground. We are working on it on the ground, and it's building an innovation center where these young people can come in, learn about AI skills, build co-create solutions, and to their own problems, learn, programming skills, learn like key skills for the future for a longer period of time. So we are still working on that idea at the moment, and again, like I'm a man of ideas. I don't know what I would build in the future. I don't know what I would create. But one of the things that I've learned is that for us to build the future we want to see, or for us to build the future we want to create, it's very important for us to look ahead at the future. So one of the things that I tell people is that you look at the future and then you walk back to the present and then you imagine the future, because all of the solutions of the future were imagined in the present. So that's what I'm hoping to and creating a pathway forward for the educational sector and continue to reach like thousands and hundreds of thousands and millions and millions and millions of young people who would naturally, would not have access to tools and resources to advance their career and education. Because you see, the problem is also like very wide, right? When you look at the scale of the problem, it's wide. So we need to create a solution that can address the problem at scale.
Awesome. And I mean, I'm really looking forward to, seeing all this application go across all 36 states in Nigeria. And of course, we'll dash the other African countries much later. But thank you so much for the work you're doing. We're hoping for more impact. It's important that you understand that we see and we recognize your work, and we appreciate what you're doing, because we truly believe that one person can change the world. We don't have to be in numbers. We just have to have the heart to say, this is a problem that I really believe I can bring real solutions to, and that's what you have done. So thank you again. And please, if Daddy is available, send my love to him, because it's very important that Daddy and Mommy gets to share from this love as well. Thank you so much for your time this evening. Okay, so change often begins with one person, one teacher who stays after class, one volunteer who starts a literacy cycle, one citizen who chooses rather to learn than teach others. Empowering communities through education doesn't require massive institutions. It starts with individuals who believe in the power of knowledge. When one person takes the initiative to share, support, and uplift through education, they can, of course, create a ripple effect, and that ripple effect can reach families, neighborhoods, eventually transform entire communities. In every village, every city or street, there is someone who can be that spark. Maybe that person might be you, because one educated, empowered citizen can ignite movement, and of course, a movement can also change the world. I did that as a child, just learning, and I saw how important it was for us to, to learn your ABCs, your whatever. So by the time I was going up the second primary school, right, I started bringing up the young people within my community there in Kaduna. They were not going to school. The parents didn't believe in education. But when I started teaching them, and the parents saw how excited and how they started, learning English, with that their beautiful Hausa accent, that made the parents enroll the children in school. These were children that had no plans to go to school in the first place. So you think you are not making an impact until you just start one thing. It's very important that you don't sleep on it. Please, as much as you can. If there's anything, and you don't have to have so much, just start. I only started with a blackboard and a chalk. And, so many people got educated just by that one act. So it's important that you know and you see it, and you just act. That's all we are asking for. Thank you again for watching. And please remember to share. Part of the action is to share this link. Before we go, ensure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, that Official Upgrade TV. Like, share, invite families, friends, to watch and follow the conversation. If you missed the quote for today, it says, "One child, one teacher, one book, one pen can change the world." And this was from Malala Yousafzai, right? We'll see you guys tomorrow, 8 p.m. Enjoy the rest of your evening.